Hello, I'm Chris Fowler, and welcome to SportsCentury. Born and raised in the Bible Belt, where they still say sir and ma'am, Terry Bradshaw landed in Pittsburgh with all the innocence of a steer entering the slaughterhouse. He was hit with a prolonged siege of insults aimed at his origins and perceived stupidity. Among them, tags like dummy and rube.
If John Elway, Montana, Marino, if they were my quarterbacks in college, the first thing they would say is, boy, that guy's great. Boy, what kind of stats did he have? If I say now that I was Terry Bradshaw's receiver in college, the very first question people ask is he that stupid?
Terry tells a story when, everybody thinks I'm stupid. I don't know what I'm doing. They didn't know what I was doing. They didn't think I could spell cat. Sure I could. It's spelled with a K.
Terry Bradshaw. How in the world did your team manage to win over some of the predictions that a few years ago that you weren't so smart?
Well, I guess they wanted to spite me. I don't know.
If there's two ways to say something wrong, Terry will say it 3 ways.
Now I've lost all my thoughts here. And it doesn't take a lot for me to get distracted. Lewis and Clark couldn't find those thoughts.
People might think that as dumb, where he's just acting silly, having fun. After all, perception gets to be greater than reality.
Standing in bold contrast to Bradshaw's reputation as less than brilliant are the quarterback's accomplishments. He was just stupid enough to lead the Steelers to 7 division titles and 4 Super Bowl victories.
Bradshaw deep for Swan. He has it. I don't know how Bradshaw got it off.
He's been defined by winning championships. When you talk about Terry Bradshaw's success, it isn't about great statistics, completion percentage. It's about winning those Super Bowl titles.
They're not going to win those Super Bowls, no matter how good the defense was without Terry Bradshaw.
And he gets in trouble, but gets out of it, and he finds, Cunningham. What an arm.
I don't ever remember a guy throwing a ball like Terry. When Terry threw the football, you could hear a whistle.
He could rifle that rock. That ball would get on that receiver. They better get their heads around because he was letting it go.
He's one of the most athletic quarterbacks ever played the game. I mean, there was not a throw that Terry Bradshaw couldn't make.
You believe this game? I can't believe that throw.
It wouldn't matter whether that receiver was covered or whether the defense was in the right kind of defense. He just fired it in there. Boom, it was there.
The weakness in his game was that sometimes he would throw in where it was double covered and couldn't make that play in there.
Backed by one of the best defenses in NFL history, Bradshaw strode the field like a riverboat gambler, often airing out the ball into a net of defenders. The results were mixed. In his 14 years with the Steelers, he threw 212 touchdowns and 210 interceptions. He offers no apologies for taking long shots.
It bored me to throw a short pass. I wanted to throw it deep.
When you have an intimidating, dominating defense, it frees you up as a player offensively because you can be more aggressive. You can take more chances.
They get a double coverage on Swan. Bradshaw reads it. That still goes to him.
As a receiver, it's nice to know the quarterback has that kind of confidence in you, that he's going to go to you and give you a chance to make a catch.
You take chances at that time, and that's how you make things happen. And he sure made some big plays happen.
Bradshaw's most memorable gamble occurred in the 1972 AFC Divisional Playoffs. Down 7-6 to the Raiders, he took the snap with 22 seconds left in the game.
He's looking. He's in trouble back there. He looks. He throws deep, and it is batted away.
As the ball tumbled above the turf, it was snatched by Steelers running back Franco Harris. The Steelers won 13-7. The play was forever known as the Immaculate Reception.
You talk about McNabb and McNair and Steve Young. He was just as good an athlete as those guys with his mobility.
Breaks free. 25, 20, 15, 10. He's all the way to the 4-yard line.
Terry Bradshaw usually played, I guess, around 230 pounds. One year he played at 215, and when they clocked him in the 40, he was the fastest man on the team.
I used to have extra practices with my defensive linemen just on hitting a bigger guy. Because most quarterbacks, you would come up and go like that, and, they'd go down looking out their ear hole and stuff. And with him, with Bradshaw, you'd hit and you'd bounce off.
He would wait and wait and wait, and then release and then take the big hit. And he was so strong physically that he could handle it.
Boy, this is a sign of a great quarterback. He knew he was going to get it.
He went out there with hurt arms and collarbones and ribs, and he still stuck it out for the team.
Good Lord. This is his right arm this time. How much can he take?
You see a quarterback out there with the cast playing. I mean, you see a cast on one hand, you got to take a snap. I mean, to me, that's just the desire to be out there and to lead your offense.
Make big plays, never give up, scramble, run hard, 3-4 guys tackling him. Those are the things that spurred his teammates.
Terry would tell us, he said, you can lose with me, but you can't win without me. And he said it in a way that we understood.
It was interesting to see him develop as a person, as a leader, from some insecure years in the beginning.
If the roots of Bradshaw's insecurity showed in his early years in the NFL, they ran deep into the southern soil of his childhood and extended beyond his gridiron glory.
Just about every weekend, we gathered up at my grandparents' house in Hall Summit, Louisiana, on a little 40-acre farm, and we fished in all the local ponds and built kites, you know, milked cows, play. It was great country life. It was just all family.
Born in Shreveport, Louisiana on September 2nd, 1948, Terry was the second of 3 brothers.
Terry's parents are very much at the core of his life. They are and have been extraordinarily supportive parents in whatever he's done.
He and his mother have always been really close. His mother is a very affectionate mother. She's a very demonstrative person. She's a hugger. She's a kisser.
Bradshaw's father was as hard as his mother was soft.
He was a disciplinarian. Nobody ever got out of line. Whatever he said, everybody did. All the boys were afraid of him, but they respected him.
My dad wasn't a loving guy, not an affectionate guy. He was tough, tough, tough.
Terry was fortunate to have grown up with someone who insisted on the kind of discipline that his father insisted on, because Terry was a wild child, and his father forced him to focus.
Terry was very mischievous at times, and he was my troublemaker. I let Terry drive home one Sunday from church. He goes in my drive on 2 wheels, and I'm afraid he's going through my den.
Despite his father's efforts to make him focus, Bradshaw's attention wandered in the classroom, where he struggled for C's at Woodlawn High School.
I saw him many times glancing from the window. He could see the practice field. There were times when I knew he was not thinking about friends, Romans, countrymen, but he was thinking about the first play they were going to start with.
When we would just cram for a test at night, like but the night before test, he couldn't sit down more than an hour.
All his teachers told my wife and I that he could be a nice student, you know, if he'd apply himself.
Would you like school if you couldn't remember anything? Everybody else got it. How come I didn't get it? It's embarrassing. Nowadays, you get tested. But when I was growing up, he's a hyper boy.
Terry's a bundle of nerves. He was always full of energy and had to be doing something. He couldn't sleep, so he'd take that football and he'd throwing it up, catching it.
And I'd throwing that ball up and watching it spiral. And I'd hit the ceiling. Thunk. Thunk. And my dad would be in there trying to sleep. Terry, sir, get me down in there. Yes, sir. I'd wait till he'd hear him snore. Thunk.
Every free moment he's throwing the football. He's throwing it at a bucket hanging on a swing set or through an old tire, and it's going for 8 hours.
Bradshaw's enthusiasm and strong arm earned him a spot on the varsity as a sophomore, but for 2 seasons, he stood on the sidelines.
One of the first times that he got to play, we had his team pretty well beat, and I asked Terry to go in there and just, keep it on the ground, And Terry fakes off tackle and throws one of them blue darters about 50 yards down there for a touchdown.
Given the ball as a senior in 1965, Bradshaw led Woodlawn to the state finals. He gained even wider recognition by throwing the javelin for a national high school record of 224 feet, 11.5 inches.
You could get a good indication there. Here's a guy that's got a great arm and he's going places.
Detroit tried to recruit him to play baseball, and we weren't interested. Football was it.
Although Bradshaw's preference was Louisiana Tech, he signed a letter of intent to attend LSU. The fallout was swift and painful.
I remember he called one Saturday morning and told me that he had signed a letter of intent with LSU, and I was surprised because I thought he was going to Tech. So I broke up with him.
I felt pressured to sign with LSU because of a good friend of mine, and I just wanted to make him happy. After I'd signed with LSU, I didn't know how to get out of it.
He said, I think I'm going to try to fail the SAT. And I said, that's going to be bad. He said, what else do I do? I can't break my word.
He didn't want to hurt anybody. I don't think he intentionally failed the ACT. I think he was just confused. I don't think he studied for it.
Intentionally or not, Bradshaw failed the entry exam to LSU and ended up at Louisiana Tech. As a junior and senior, Bradshaw lit up the Gulf States Conference. Passing for more than 5,200 yards, he earned back-to-back Division II All-American honors.
All of a sudden, a few scouts would trickle in, and our senior year, we had scouts at every game, tons of them, and they could see his potential.
I was the coach in the Senior Bowl, and Terry Bradshaw was my quarterback. And when I first saw him, I could not believe his arm strength. And I let the scouts from all of the teams come right out onto the field, listen in to Terry calling the plays in the huddle, and then watching him throw the deep ball. Just an amazing arm.
Although Pittsburgh drafted All-American quarterback Terry Hanratty the previous year, the 1-13 Steelers turned down 18 offers for the top pick in 1970 when they selected Bradshaw. The kid with the golden arm arrived in Steeltown and made a prediction that proved ill-advised.
He told everybody he was going to lead the Steelers to the Super Bowl, and then the next year when he actually had to start playing, you know, it wasn't all a bed of roses.
I was in attendance at his first press conference at Pittsburgh, and I saw right away that guys from the East Coast were going to eat him alive.
Terry Bradshaw inherited a team with a dismal history. In their 37 years, the Steelers had managed just 8 winning seasons and had never won a division title.
There was so much pressure on him because he's the #1 choice, and we were a team that had been so bad for so many years, and we were just dying for a quarterback to come in and save us.
He tried to, turn the entire program around individually in 1 year, and it's not going to happen.
You're talking about baptism by fire. He had never seen the defenses that the NFL threw at him when he came in.
He was indecisive, and he would call things and then change his mind.
He got back to the pocket, didn't wait his 3 seconds to let the play develop and either try to force it in there real fast or, try to run the ball.
He would really get wired, and if you get wired, it gets in your way. This was a question of maturing and settling down.
He was so uptight, a very hyper guy, and we had to hypnotize him a night before the game. And we did that about 3 games so he could relax.
Lou Ricky gave me 3 buzzwords: relax, confidence, concentrate.
Terry's unwillingness to really focus as well as he could have on the defenses and what he's going to see probably delayed his progress.
I never have liked to study, never. I've always done everything by the seat of my pants. NFL is a very regimented profession where you just have to study defenses so much. And I just flat didn't like doing those things.
We would have a meeting, and you would come in and miss part of that meeting, and could not have that. If you're going to be a professional football player, you've got to dedicate yourself to it.
From 1970 through 1973, Bradshaw could not find a rhythm. he threw 41 touchdowns and 73 interceptions.
Bradshaw firing, forget it. Dick Anderson is third, interception, touchdown.
Impatient with Bradshaw's lack of progress, many Steeler fans called for his backup.
Bradshaw had been drafted a year after Hanratty. Hanratty was the All-American, you know, the Notre Dame guy. Pittsburgh loved him. He was a local boy, played up in Butler, just north of here.
There was a lot of verbal abuse that Terry took, and a lot of abuse that he took in the papers. It was almost like the Civil War was still going on between a Southern guy and the Northerners who were here, and they were calling Terry dumb.
He was a very sincere guy. People have the tendency to believe if you're sincere, you must be dumb.
He would be so totally open and say things that most athletes would guard or not say, and all of a sudden I realized that that's when people kind of started taking advantage of him.
We're talking about Bradshaw all week long. The writers wanted to know his grades in high school, his grades in college.
It pissed me off. I hate to use that kind of language, but it chapped my royal ass that someone could think I was stupid. You know, Rocky Bleier said he changed his plays in the huddle.
Let's run. Okay, fine. No. We'll run. Yeah, full right. No, full right. No. Okay, fine. We'll run this play.
And another thing, why didn't someone come to my defense?
How did he want us to stand up? You know, carry posters around, Terry's not dumb. We knew he wasn't dumb. That was enough for us.
If I had to do it over again, I would be much more supportive of Terry. I was more or less teasing him about his making dumb decisions or whatever, and I shouldn't have done that.
He told me one time he heard a young person's voice saying, "Mr. Bradshaw, Mr. Bradshaw." And he turned around and this little kid said, "You stink." He said, I wanted to throw the ball, just hit him right between the eyes.
They cheered when he was hurt. To cheer a person when they get hurt, I think is one of the worst things that an athlete can have happen.
It wasn't the entire 48,000 people that were in the stand. It was probably maybe 500 or 1,000, but it sounded like everyone.
I couldn't imagine that many people didn't like me. I think there's a part of me that always wanted everybody to love me. It affected the way I played. It scared me, made me nervous.
Not everybody is going to like you, and you have to come to grips with that.
The situation was so bad for him that his mother actually came to Pittsburgh and moved into his apartment and lived with him.
Terry and his mother went to a hockey game in Pittsburgh, and they had invited Terry down to hit the puck on the ice, and they booed him. And they booed him till they went out the door.
Terry's always tried to be a people pleaser, and to have people turn on him and embarrass him in front of his family hurt him a lot.
The happy-go-lucky guy was gone. It was, everything was serious.
After a game, you would go out to the gate, there'd always be fans out there, you signing autographs. And you could see Terry starting to duck out the back way. That's not the way you endear yourself to people, because then they said, now you don't want to be part of their family.
I hated that place as much as they hated me. I couldn't stand my coach, and I didn't like those fans, and I didn't like Pittsburgh. And that was all because I couldn't emotionally deal with failing.
In 1974, head coach Chuck Noll inserted Joe Gilliam as his starting quarterback.
I just went home and just broke down crying. How could I be such a failure when I loved something so much and had spent my entire life to get to that point? I mean, I felt like I was going to have a mental breakdown.
Ever since I was a little bitty boy, I always felt like I was different. A desire to be someone was always an early feeling I had. I always wanted to be someone special.
Terry was the most naive person, I think, in the world until he had graduated, gone to the Steelers, and got into that environment. The real world hit him pretty hard, and he began to not trust individuals.
Terry was socially immature. I just think he hadn't been around in the big cities and hadn't seen what the rest of the world's like.
When you come from a close-knit family that has encouraged you from here to there, you get put in a situation where you're really, quote, big time, and you don't get that same support from everybody, yeah, I think it would lead to insecurity.
There was a lot of conflicts going on. Who he was, his own background, his own culture, his own beliefs, his religion, his stardom, and all those things were a tough adjustment. So, you know, he became a loner.
The shame of it was there was never a more sociable guy than Terry. Terry, he loved sitting around with you, gabbing for hours, but to see this extremely sociable person become a recluse was a sad thing.
Not all of Terry Bradshaw's loneliness stemmed from his poor choices on the field. In 1971, he married former Miss Teen USA Melissa Babish. Bradshaw later recalled thinking, "What in the world am I doing? I am definitely out of my mind."
When he told me that, I said, why do you need to just back out? Well, everybody was there. I couldn't do that. You didn't want to embarrass us. I said, it would have been a lot better to embarrass us than it would to go through with it. I don't know why he did that.
The marriage lasted 18 months. In 1976, Bradshaw entered what turned out to be another mismatch, this time the professional figure skater JoJo Starbuck.
She didn't like the ranch and she left, and I had to go get her. I had to go get her 2 or 3 times, bring her back, and she never stayed.
They just are always like this the whole time. The whole marriage was just doomed from the beginning.
I hate to say male chauvinist, but I guess it's true. I wanted her there, you know. I'm not up on these modern day ways, you know, and I didn't mind her working, but I wanted her home at night, or else I wouldn't have gotten married. I thought I was going to be by myself all the time.
That breakup with JoJo was devastating. In training camp, we jokingly kidded about sign-up sheets of making sure that everybody was with Terry, you know, by the time the lights went out until, you know, either he went to sleep through exhaustion so that he wouldn't do anything stupid.
That's when Mother and I would have to go see him or bring him to us and help him get over it.
I think he truly loved JoJo, and that was hard for him to get over.
When Starbuck filed for divorce in the summer of 1980, the emotionally wrung-out Bradshaw, who had kept his teammates and the city of Pittsburgh at arm's length, was isolated.
He was a little bit paranoid, and part of it, too, was his fault in the fact that he didn't become part of the community, as all those other players did.
He probably didn't make himself available enough so people would get to know him.
He tried to isolate himself. Terry, you know, Terry was not a very outgoing person. He wasn't at a lot of parties. He liked the ranch, and, you know, he felt more comfortable in that.
Terry didn't really need people to make him happy. A lot of his fun things that he did were he could do by himself.
I saw this scruffy-looking dude sitting over by a plane with a straw hat on and a fishing pole. It was Terry Bradshaw. He started a plane, heard there was a great bass lake up there, and he was going fishing all by himself. Thank God he's a country boy.
He never went to any of the Steelers Super Bowl parties afterwards because we were always there. Terry wasn't much of a partier anyway. He'd rather, you know, share his time with us.
All these guys were my friends, but I was not a buddy-buddy to anybody. I didn't have time to focus on building these great, close relationships because I had this job I had to do that consumed me.
Somebody once said about the Noel Bradshaw thing, one needed love and the other couldn't give love. You know, Noel was not the kind of guy to pat you on the back, and that's what Terry craved.
The 14-year relationship of Chuck Noll and Terry Bradshaw was a study in contrasts. Strictly old school, Noll believed that discipline and execution won more games than babysitting.
And he's looking at the big picture. He's looking at Terry, other than he wants Terry to produce. And Terry couldn't figure that out early on. He was used to coaches smiling and slapping him on the butt.
I was scared of Chuck. Always was. It's like a little kid, always wanting his approval.
One of the things that, of course, did not help was the fact that when he'd come off the field, Chuck Noll would stand in his face berating him.
He did call him a dummy a few times. Terry is very sensitive, and I think it was very hard for Terry to get used to this.
We were playing up in New York in a preseason game against the Giants, and it was right before the half. Chuck said to me, don't turn it over. What do you think I did? Spider Lockhart, the defensive back for the New York Giants, he's wide open. Don't turn it over. Throw it to him. There he goes, touchdown. Don't turn it over. Oh, gee. Then you go back to the sideline. You just get your ass chewed out.
Coach Noah got him with face mask and drug him around. Terry called me very upset. I said, I'll talk to Mr. Rooney, and that won't happen again.
Known affectionately as the Chief, Steelers owner Art Rooney often provided Bradshaw with fatherly encouragement.
If Bradshaw had a bad game, the Chief would come there and he'd have that cigar for him. And you could see him as he walked away but don't worry about it. You'll do better next week.
Terry and my relationship was more, hey, you're being paid to do this, let's do it.
Chuck Noll was really the right person for him. There was no question about that because Chuck was very firm with him.
People have to sell themselves to the guys that are around them. And Terry hadn't done that early on. Joe Gilliam, for example, performed well and did things well, so we gave him an opportunity. And what we wanted Terry to do was earn it.
As bad as Terry wanted it, I don't know if he really pushed himself to the same degree as he would have had Joe Gilliam not been here.
When Coach Noll benched him, I saw a different Terry after that. I saw more determination to get it all back and to keep it.
He had to make a conscious decision. And we're talking about the 1974 season, in where he had to say to himself, you can be the quarterback here. You can lead this team in spite of Chuck, the son of a bitch.
Although Gilliam led the Steelers to a 4-1-1 start in 1974, his 8 interceptions prompted Noll to replace him with Bradshaw. But after performing poorly in a 13-10 loss to Houston in Week 12, the troubled quarterback was called into the head coach's office.
We were going up to play New England. He said, this job's yours. If we get anywhere, we're going to get there with you. That's all I needed here. I responded to a pat, more so than a firm hand, and never looked back.
As Bradshaw gathered confidence, Pittsburgh closed out the regular season with 2 victories and a 10-3-1 record. After beating Buffalo and Oakland in the playoffs, the Steelers won their first Super Bowl, defeating Minnesota 16-6.
I really saw him mature from a guy that didn't have the slightest idea of what he was going to call to a guy that knew what you could stop and what you couldn't stop.
A year later, the Steelers were back in the championship game.
There were about 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter of Super Bowl X. The situation would have been a gamble to throw the football. And Bradshaw called the play.
Here is Bradshaw. Bothered from behind. Lynn Swan is open. Got it. Steeler touchdown.
I tackled him, and Larry Cole's forearm caught Terry on the chin, and I don't think he remembered the last quarter of the game.
They carried Bradshaw in like a corpse, right? We come over, and Bradshaw said, did I fumble it?
Do you remember anything?
Not a whole lot.
In January of 1979, the Steelers and the Cowboys squared off again in the Super Bowl. Bradshaw was brilliant, capping a regular season MVP performance by passing for more than 300 yards for the first time in his career.
He's a fraud.
Bradshaw's 4 touchdown passes helped beat Dallas 35-31 and win him game MVP honors. The next season, the Steelers kept rolling.
In Super Bowl 14 against the Rams, they're trailing in the fourth quarter. It's 3rd and 9.
Deep for Stallworth. Touchdown for the Steelers. Hello, folks. That's touch.
After winning their 4th Super Bowl in 6 years, the Steelers began to show their age. When an elbow injury sidelined Bradshaw in 1983, tension again mounted between Noll and his quarterback.
I told him what the doctors, had told me, that it wasn't going to work, any kind of surgery. He decided that he would go and have it done, and he did. And, that was the end of it.
And I said, Coach, I can't play anymore. He wished me well. We shook hands. I turned around and left. And that was it.
He felt Chuck didn't show him enough respect. Terry wanted to be pampered a little bit, and he wasn't pampered, and so he pretty much kissed Pittsburgh and the Steelers off.
After Bradshaw retired in the spring of 1984, a bitterness lingered. Not only did it prevent him from speaking to Noel for nearly 2 decades, but when Art Rooney died in 1988, Bradshaw was conspicuously absent from the funeral. Then, a year later, Bradshaw distanced himself even further from the Steeler family when he chose broadcasting partner Vern Lundquist to induct him into the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
I know that in his heart of hearts that Terry wishes that he had had a closer relationship with Chuck or with any of his teammates so that he could have involved them.
Football in Pittsburgh, to me, after the first 3 or 4 years, became a huge business. And then that's why when I left that sucker, I buried it and went on about my life.
After his playing days, Bradshaw pursued a second career for which he unknowingly had been preparing since childhood. In movies, TV shows, and commercials, he played the clown.
Once he lightened up a little bit himself, he became a person that could enjoy life rather than being so concerned with the critics.
All right, which geography? Which I had a little trouble in school.
The self-deprecation came as a result of the negative things said about me. If I say worse, then maybe you'll laugh with me, but you won't know how pissed off I am at you. So I'll just turn it around. That's what I did. I just turned it around. What were they going to say? I'd already been to the mountaintop as far as insults had gone.
He's done a wonderful job of engaging in self-deprecating humor. He's made a lot of money off of that. He also tends to diffuse whatever barbs may come his way relative to that stereotype.
Terry enjoys playing the lovable yokel, the lovable redneck, and I think that that's a mask behind which he hides a fairly astute mind.
I have encountered Terry Bradshaw on the speaking circuit, and you have no idea how clever and sophisticated the man has to be in order to sound like such a bumpkin from northern Louisiana.
Howie Long and I were talking about this, and I said, what happens when Terry's IQ drops about 10 more points? And he said, that's 10 million.
When Bradshaw signed with CBS to do color commentary on NFL games in 1984, it seemed a natural fit to almost everyone.
They say be yourself, and I don't know if that's such a good idea or not.
He was pretty concerned in those early days about how he would come off. And as the days wore on and the years wore on, you could see him gaining in self-confidence. He's as much an entertainer as he is a sports analyst, and I think that's just in his nature.
In that first year, he invented a player named Willie Anderson. And Willie Anderson either made a nice block or made the tackle on about 6 different kickoffs of games we did that year. Terry said, I just want to see if anybody ever notices that there's no Willie Anderson on the roster.
We often had a saying he was allowed 2 screwball things a month. And as soon as he did something, the phone would ring. That's one of them.
From 1990 to 1993, Bradshaw was a co-host on NFL Today. When Fox outbid CBS for the NFC's rights in 1994, Bradshaw moved to the new network and came of age in a more relaxed studio atmosphere.
The best thing that ever happened to me was going to the Fox network, because there they encourage entertainment. They encourage you to be yourself. Let it happen.
You never know what Terry's going to say. And there are times when I think that Terry's not really sure what Terry's going to say. And that's his beauty.
When I was a little boy, my daddy would take me down to Bissonneau State Park and sit me on a stump out in the middle of the water, and he'd say, jump to me, son, jump to me. Daddy, I'll catch you. I wouldn't jump to him, Howie. I was petrified. I was scared. I didn't trust him. Finally, I jumped, and he caught me. I was over it. Same thing today. Tampa Bay, go to Philadelphia, win this football game, and you get a brand new state of mind.
The only effective way to manage Terry is to allow him, like a little kid, a bright kid, to tell his story laugh because it is genuinely funny, and then try to get it back on track.
There probably has been times when there's been a quiet fatherly chat.
This past week, got a call from the 49ers through Fox who said Jeff Garcia was upset about the comments I made 2 weeks ago in which I called him ugly. His mom and dad got upset with those comments. I'm telling you, ugly is the dumbest thing I've ever said since Will You Marry Me? No question about it.
The Terry you see on Sunday afternoons on Fox is Terry Bradshaw.
Terry was the same Terry Bradshaw that he was when I watched him play pro, that he was with Louisiana Tech, and that he was at Woodlawn.
That's the Terry that people in Pittsburgh didn't see before. He found his calling, and he can be himself.
At peace professionally, Bradshaw still faced serious personal issues off the set.
Well, Terry, his love life has been terrible.
In 1983, Bradshaw wed Charlotte Hopkins, with whom he had 2 daughters, Erin and Rachel. But as his broadcasting career took off in the 1990s, his third marriage began to flounder.
I think with Charlotte, it was just he was out of town and she was here, and he was nonstop.
He's the life of the party. Everybody thinks they know Terry Bradshaw. It's got to be a real challenge for him in terms of maintaining some sense of normalcy. And I would imagine that that brings with it challenges and pulls in his relationships as well.
When you come home and there's, the wife and the kids, and you're not the celebrity anymore. You're dad, which Terry appreciates, but there's still other pulls on him. So it was difficult to live up to everything that Terry Bradshaw was supposed to be.
In 1998, while Bradshaw struggled to save his marriage, he was diagnosed with ADD, attention deficit disorder.
I knew there was something wrong because I just couldn't read anything without reading it 5 or 6 times. And when I was trying to learn players' names and numbers, I just couldn't do it. It took me forever.
They had a hard time with the medication for it in the beginning, getting it level for him. And he went through a lot of highs and lows, and that was the scary part.
When he got that under control, at least got some medication and some focus, he felt much better. He was excited about the fact that he could sit and concentrate and listen to people.
Now that explains the study habits, that explains the hyperness, that explains the attention problem. Not an excuse, not a crutch, but an explanation.
Relieved by the revelation that what he had been hiding most of his life was not due to a lack of character or intelligence, Bradshaw soon was hit with another form of personal failure. In 1999, Charlotte filed for divorce after 16 years of marriage.
What he was devastated about was the girls. He was so focused on making sure that they came through the breakup of the marriage.
It was just overwhelming. And in doing all this therapy, I come find out I've been depressed, my whole darn life.
The depression, yes, I can see that. Terry is a man of enormous highs, but equally disastrous lows.
There was a time before the show when he had asked everyone to leave out of the room as we were getting dressed, and he cried on my shoulder. And he asked to have prayer before we went out to do the show so that he would have the strength to go forth.
Divorce, depression, it does not matter. When the lights go on, my man gets it done.
I am what I am, but I sure do like making you laugh. It makes me feel good. It feeds my spirit. It soothes my soul.
The problem with trying to please everybody is that you end up pleasing very few people, and least of all, you pleasing yourself.
To fill the void in his personal life, Bradshaw turned to alcohol.
I drank a lot. And you can't drink a lot, be depressed, have ADD, and expect the world to be perfect.
My dad was an alcoholic, and when I found out Terry was on the pretty heavy, I talked to him like a father should. The Lord can solve your problems, but that bottle ain't gonna help you none.
Bradshaw bottomed out on Father's Day 1999.
Preacher came over here because my wife called him because she thought I was going to commit suicide. And we went over to the barn, and it was a pretty emotional thing out there, knowing that your wife said, I don't love you anymore, and I want a divorce. And he said, are you saved? And I said, no. You want to be? And I said, yes. And I remember sweat pouring off of me. My hair was, it was the most traumatic experience of my life. So as a believer, I'm totally convinced the Holy Spirit came into my life right then.
He got back to his roots with God and rededicated his life to Christ.
It has made him, if not happier, certainly more content and certainly more accepting of the problems of his life.
It's good to be home. God bless all of you. Thank you.
On October 20th, 2002, Bradshaw reconciled with the fans in Pittsburgh after more than 2 decades.
That was a one-way street there, and Terry, I think, now recognizes that maybe he was at fault.
And I went back to show them, the Steeler fans, that I love them, I care about them. I miss my Steeler family. And I was so sure about my reception that I took my girls with me. To make sure I didn't get booed. I was still a little nervous, to be honest with you.
There's still something that bothers him inside, that insecurity of, hey, am I totally complete with my life? I think he's getting there, but he's still like a little boy almost. You know, he's got to have somebody to truly love him for what he is.
Am I happy? Happy? No. Am I miserable? Nah. I've come to a realization that I'm never going to be what I want to be. I'm coping, but I'm pleased with the journey I'm taking.
In his whirlwind search for self-identity, Terry Bradshaw has written 5 autobiographies. His journey ended not with words on printed page, but in therapy. Today, when Bradshaw isn't on the air, he often can be found at his quarter horse ranch outside of Dallas, where the hired help sometimes kids him by asking if he has taken his pill. Now, everyone laughs. For SportsCentury, I'm Chris Fowler.